The killer clown is probably one of the most infamous archetypes in modern media. Inspired by the real-life condition coulrophobia, the trope takes something that was originally meant to be humorous and amusing and turns it into something dark and sinister. As with so many other generic character concepts passing as actual characters that made up League's early roster, the killer clown, or jester in this case, would also be made into a champion in the form of Shaco. Fittingly enough, Shaco's never really had much of a backstory beyond his concept. His previous two bios didn't really tell us much beyond the fact that he was a homicidal jester whose true origins are a mystery to everyone. The second backstory does mention that he apparently worked as an assassin for hire, but where Shaco came from and whether or not he was even truly human were still left intentionally vague. Sure, that works from a certain perspective, not knowing who or what this guy really is, but it never really did anything to help him stand out. He really was just killer comedian number 548, laughing at death, using lethal props and pranks, and running around with a permanent Cheshire grin plastered on his face. The epitome of his archetype made manifest, even paying homage to the Joker's multiple choice backstory line. Since his debut on October 10th, 2009, Shaco sadly never had much presence in the lore either. I think the most memorable story he was ever involved in was a Journal of Justice interview where one daring summoner dared to try and question the evil jester. Shaco actually went along with it for a time, but of course he tried to murder the guy after the interview was over. After the Great Retcon, Shaco has been left with what is clearly meant to be a placeholder backstory. He was made by an unnamed lonely prince and somehow enchanted with vague dark magic for unknown reasons. I'll admit that the idea of making Shaco into a marionette is a somewhat interesting direction to go, but then his extended bio is literally just a repeat of his second one, telling us that nobody knows his true origins. Which kind of goes against the point of giving us an origin story in the bio blurb, doesn't it? Again, though, it's not like it really matters because, as I said before, it's basically just a placeholder anyways. Now, I've seen some fans speculate that Shaco might have been Viego's puppet, but I seriously doubt that. Given everything we know about the Ruin King and his history, it feels like a serious stretch to assume he'd ever have had any attachment to a doll, like how Isolde cared for Gwen. Besides, I really don't think we need another character shoehorned into the core cast of the Shadow Isles plotline at this point. Frankly, I think the direction for Shaco's rewrite is fairly obvious. Just make him a demon. It's literally in his title. And we still have an unnamed Demon of Delirium on the chart that Riot released a while back. It also fits fairly well into the idea of his jester theme. See, while they often get lumped together, jesters and clowns are not the same thing. Beyond originating in different times and places, the key difference is this. Clowns make fools of themselves, while jesters make fools of other people. In my rewrite video, I had Shaco acting as this malevolent force that drove others into committing acts of violence with or even for him. The more you laugh at his jokes, the deeper into his spell you fall, until you eventually wake up surrounded by bodies and covered in blood. That being said, I think you could feasibly take the concept a step further. We know from Yone, and to an extent Kindred, that demons and spirits have a whole thing about masks that hasn't been explored much yet. So here's an idea. What if Shaco was actually a demonic jester mask that took control of people and went on murder sprees with their bodies? Rather than being a puppet, he makes you the puppet, abandoning you to face the aftermath of his rampage when he's had his fun. After all, what can his victims do? Blame their atrocities on an evil mask? How many would be willing to believe that, especially once the mask is nowhere to be found? Also, I think this would help Shaco stand out a bit more than just being a demon possessing a jester puppet. Since Fiddle Six already kind of does something similar with the possessed scarecrow angle. Of course, you could just say that the jester is simply the form that Shaco chooses to embody, like how Evelyn is a blue lady or Tom Kench is a giant fish, but I stand by the idea that Shaco possessing the bodies of his targets fits better with the overall theme of making fools out of others. We could easily just say that he conjures the jester outfit around his current vessel, so his in-game appearance would be whatever body he currently happens to be possessing. At the end of the day, though, what Shaco needs more than anything is some originality. Whether you go the demon angle or not, he's just such a nothing character. A painfully generic archetype with a blank page for a backstory. The fact that nobody knows who or what Shaco is feels, to me at least, less like an attempt to create a genuine mystery and more like an excuse to not have to bother justifying his existence. But what do you all think? What direction do you think Riot should take Shaco for an update? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll see you all next time.